Bathroom Breaks and Bedtime Tales presents The Well by Sevastian Winters. The rope groaned as Thomas lowered the bucket. He leaned over the stone lip of the well, peering down into the darkness where the water used to shine. The smell rising from it was colder now, damp stone instead of fresh water. The bucket struck the surface with a dull splash far deeper than it should have been. Thomas frowned. He had been drawing water from this well since he was a boy. In those days, the bucket barely needed half the rope. The water had been close enough to see your own reflection in it if you leaned over the stones. Now he had to tie 2 ropes together. Behind him, the square was quiet in the early morning. A thin wind pushed dust across the packed earth. The fig tree beside the well had already dropped half its leaves, though summer had not yet finished. Thomas pulled the rope hand over hand. The bucket rose slowly. It sloshed only a little, too little. He filled his own pail and stepped aside as the next villager approached. The line moved in silence. No one spoke much anymore while waiting for water. Beyond the square, the fields stretched away in dull brown strips. The irrigation ditches were dry. The air smelled like sun-baked clay. Thomas watched the well while the others drew their buckets. The water was dropping. Everyone could see it. But the rule remained the same as it had always been. 1 bucket per household per day. It had never needed to be spoken. The rule lived in the bones of the village the way sunrise did. Thomas lifted his pail and began the walk home. All day the thought followed him like a shadow. If the water keeps dropping. The wind grew hotter as the afternoon passed. By evening, the dust had worked its way into his throat until every swallow felt dry. His wife poured their water carefully into a clay jar. "That's all?" she asked quietly. "That's what the well gave." She nodded but said nothing more. Later that night, Thomas lay awake listening to the wind moving through the dry leaves outside their window. Sleep would not come. He kept seeing the water line inside the well. Lower, lower, lower. Finally he rose. The square was empty when he reached it. Moonlight lay across the stones of the well like pale cloth. The rope hung coiled beside it. Thomas stood there for a long moment. If everyone takes 1 bucket. The thought stopped halfway through. His hand closed around the rope. The bucket slipped down into the darkness again. The splash came from far below. When he hauled it up, he filled his own pail first. Then he lowered the bucket again. The second pail felt heavier in his hands as he carried it home, though the water inside it weighed no more than the first. The next morning, the water sat a little lower in the well. No one said anything. But a woman at the back of the line stared down into the shaft longer than the others. That night, she came to the square after the moon had risen. The rope creaked again. Within a few days, the dust in the village thickened with footsteps after dark. Doors opened quietly. Sandaled feet crossed the square. The bucket moved up and down the shaft long after sunset. Each person who came told themselves the same thing while lowering the rope. just until the rains return. The water dropped faster now. Soon the villagers had to lie on their stomachs and reach farther over the stones just to see the surface glimmering below. One morning, the bucket came up with a thick ring of mud around its rim. Someone muttered a curse. The line grew louder that day. "You're drawing too much. No more than anyone else. We must be careful now." The next morning, the bucket scraped. The sound echoed inside the well like stone grinding against bone. When the rope came up, the bucket held only a shallow puddle. By midday, the square was full of shouting. "You've been stealing water! Someone must be coming here at night. We must catch whoever is doing it." Faces turned toward one another with suspicion. Tomas stood near the fig tree, saying nothing. The old woman, Mara, pushed slowly through the crowd. She had lived in the village longer than anyone else. Her back was bent, but her eyes were clear as winter. "Move," she said. The crowd parted. Mara stepped to the edge of the well and looked down. For a long time she did not speak. The wind moved dust across the square. At last she straightened. "The water is gone," she said. The villagers surged forward, peering into the darkness. The bottom of the well lay cracked and pale. A child near the front of the crowd looked up at the adults. "How did it happen?" he asked. No one answered. Across the square, a man slowly set down the extra bucket he had brought with him. Another woman lowered her eyes. Tomas stared at the ground. The rope hung loose against the stones, swaying slightly in the wind. The child tugged at Mara's sleeve. "What do we do now?" Mara lifted her empty bucket. She turned toward the road that ran out of the village and into the brown distance where the river lay many miles away. Her sandals scraped softly against the dust as she began to walk. For a moment, no one moved. Then Tomas picked up his pail. One by one, the villagers followed her out of the square, leaving the rope to sway against the empty well in the wind. It moved slowly up and down, as if someone deep in the earth were still drawing water that would never come.